I'm Gary Goforth. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having this workshop. It has been exceptionally informative. As I mentioned in your first meeting as a board, in fact, my only comment, this, I believe, is the most important water quality issue that you will face in your tenure, and that is the water quality in Lake Okeechobee. It affects the lives and livelihood of the people around the lake, but it also affects those of us that live on the coast. The urgency that Jackie referenced is real. We live it day to day. By us living along the St. Lucie, we have twice the risk of dying from liver cancer or liver diseases than the national average, and that's been highly correlated to the toxic algae related to Lake Okeechobee. So there is an absolute sense of urgency for the public health. I also want to say I'm probably the world's largest supporter of increased budget and staff for water quality data. I don't want my comments to be misinterpreted as anything other than tremendous support for more data, more staff, more budgets to do what this agency is charged with. What has happened over the last 8 years to this agency is abominable with respect to the staffing cuts and the budget cuts. A hole has been dug for you all. I'm a big supporter. I will help you every way I can to rally support for increased taxes. Thank you, Mr. Frick, other presenters this morning. Major take-home messages, I think. Number one, conversion of septic tanks to centralized sewers is not the end-all. It is not the completion of the problem. It is simply the next phase, as is the policy of the state of Florida to recycle about 70% of the human waste from wastewater treatment plants back onto the land, as opposed to a septic tank. Yes, and I'm also a major fan of converting septic tanks that need to be converted. Don't misinterpret my comments. But centralized sewers create a huge watershed runoff problem. Even if they're Class AA, they still represent the same amount of phosphorus, the same amount of nitrogen. You heard that the agronomic rate for nitrogen is the target. Florida soils typically have enough phosphorus, and yet what happens when you add biosolids that contain roughly 2.5% phosphorus at the rate for nitrogen? You have an exceptional excess of phosphorus. And so just because they're fertilizers, just because they're acknowledged as a fertilizer, it does not mean that it's not a huge problem to the watershed. With respect to the data, thank God for the South Florida Water Management District staff for collecting the data. We are now able to compare the BMAP for Lake Okeechobee, the computer model of the best case scenario, assuming all the BMPs are effective, assuming biosolids is not an issue. In 2017, the measured data collected by the South Florida Water Management District staff was 60% higher than what DEP's annual report said. DEP's annual report said we're making progress. We're 23% towards achieving our goal. The reality, thank God for the South Florida Water Management District staff and their collection, was that we're 23% worse than when we started. You have to have the data, you have to analyze it, you have to have a water quality control program that's successful, because when it's successful, the public health is protected. When the program is not successful, the public health is not protected. And I challenge the state. You have let us down. I challenge you all to improve. I've submitted extensive comments to Tom Fraser, to Noah Valenstein, to Tom Frick, and providing whatever help I can do, and I continue to offer my assistance to this board. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you. Mark Perry.